I know you love earning travel rewards and cash back, and that's why you're going to love Rakuten. With Rakuten, you can earn cash back on everything you need to book your dream trip, hotels, flights, rental cars, experiences, and more, while still booking through your favorite travel sites. And don't worry, cash back can be earned on top of earning the credit card points and the hotel and airline loyalty points that matter most to you, depending on how you make your booking. Plus, with Rakuten, you can also earn cash back on groceries and other purchases like electronics, pet supplies, and more. And the best part, you can join today for free and start earning cash back on top of your travel rewards. Go to Rakuten.com or get the app. That's Rakuten, Rakuten. Rakuten, the most rewarding way to shop.
Do not think that you can't do this because you have never slept out in the woods. Up until that day we stepped foot on that trail, I had never slept in a tent in the wild that I had carried my food. We got on the trail. I didn't even know how to use the filter. But if we can do this, so can you.
That is Jessica Suero. She's today's guest along with her son, Largo. Jessica was on the podcast not too long ago with her husband, Will, talking about their 10 years traveling full-time with their 2 kids. And we celebrated that milestone, talked about some of the mental health challenges around nomadic travel. And as if that weren't enough, 10 years traveling across 68 countries as a nomadic family. To cap it off, Jessica and her son Largo decided they would tackle America's most famous long-distance trail, the Appalachian Trail, a 2,190-plus mile hiking route that runs from Georgia to Maine, passes through 14 states. And they did it all while balancing remote school, work commitments, and physical demands of hiking, of course. And I invited them on to share their experience. I really wanted to focus on the travel experience on the Appalachian Trail, the AT, as opposed to some of the logistics surrounding that, because you can get plenty of that information out there. But I wanted to hear what it was like for them out on the trail together as mother and son. And in this episode, you're going to hear just that. You're going to hear how returning to America after a decade abroad gave them a chance to gather some new perspectives on their home country, what it's really like to hike for 6 months through 14 states with all of your possessions on your back, from the physical aspect to some of the unexpected mental rewards. You're going to get a peek into the famous trail magic culture, where random acts of kindness from strangers are the norm. Of course, how did they share a tent for a half a year without killing each other, mother and son? 52-year-old mom, 17-year-old son. You'll hear what that was like, along with some practical wisdom for anyone considering a long-distance hike, regardless of your age, experience level, or physical condition, and loads more. Whether you're dreaming of tackling this entire trail yourself, maybe just a slice of it, maybe another trail, maybe you're just looking for some inspiration for your next adventure, or you're just curious about the transformative power of a long-distance walk like this, I think you're going to really enjoy this conversation. And I'm also going to share a fun tradition. I didn't ask them about this, but this would give anybody with a sweet tooth enough motivation to finish at least half of the Appalachian Trail if you decide to embark on it. All of that and much more happening right now in this episode. So buckle up, strap in. Thanks for being here, and welcome to the Zero to Travel podcast, my friend.
You're listening to the Zero to Travel podcast, where we explore exciting travel-based work, lifestyle, and business opportunities, helping you to achieve your wildest travel dreams. And now your host, world wanderer and travel junkie, Jason Moore.
Hey, it's Jason here with ZeroToTravel.com. Welcome to the show. Thanks for hanging out, letting me bring a little travel into your ears today. This is a show to help you travel the world on your terms to fill your life with as much travel as you desire, no matter what your situation or experience. Don't forget, we got a free newsletter over at ZeroToTravel.com/newsletter. Sign up for that. And it was a pleasure to have Jessica and Largo here. You'll hear in the beginning of the conversation, I don't get an opportunity very often to ask the children of nomadic families what their experience was like growing up in that way. So you'll hear a bit about that. And if you like this conversation, you might enjoy listening to my last episode with Jessica and her husband, Will, where they talk about their 10 years as a nomadic family. Big focus on why travel isn't a quote-unquote cure-all. We talk about self-care and therapy, why it's critical for travelers, and a lot around that and play more. So check out that episode if you're interested. Now, today's episode, of course, all around the Appalachian Trail, something that I've wanted to do for a really long time. You know, one of my, I would say, I try not to live with the regrets, but I would say maybe it's one of my travel regrets, not hiking the Appalachian Trail. I wanted to do it early in my 20s, just kept traveling and working, going to other places and doing other things, and I never carved out the time to spend walking for months on the Appalachian Trail. And hey, listen, I'm still here. I'm not writing it off. Could be something I do in the future. But if that's resonating with you and you are younger and you're like, hey, I want to do the Appalachian Trail too, I'm just going to say maybe use this episode as your springboard to planning, because time goes quick, my friend. I guess you can't do it all. You can't fulfill all of the travel dreams, but hey, we can try, can't we? Okay. On the back end, I'm going to share with you a fun tradition I read about, I should say, that happens at the halfway point of the Appalachian Trail. And I'll leave you with a quote to wrap this one up. For now, please enjoy my conversation with Jessica and Largo. You can learn more about them at WorldTowning.com. They have a YouTube station and all the social media and stuff like that. You can get all the links there. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you on the other side. Cheers. Jessica and Largo, welcome to the Zero to Travel podcast, my friend. Welcome back. My friends, I should say, plural.
Thank you for having us again.
Absolutely. Pleasure.
Largo, how old are you now?
I am now 17. Well, I was 16 when we finished our big adventure that we were on here to talk about, but it has been a wild year of travel.
You're like 1 week in, no, 2 weeks in, 3 weeks in, I don't even know, to being a 17-year-old.
Yeah,
Wow, you're
crazy.
so big.
You made a brief appearance on the first podcast we recorded together when you guys came through town on your RV, on your little European RV, or tiny, everything's so much smaller in Europe. And I was like amazed at how you guys were packed in there. And I think you must have been, I don't know, 12 or 11?
Around
maybe?
there,
Yeah, probably maybe 11 or 12. Oh my gosh, he was a baby.
And it's crazy how much has happened since.
Right?
And now you have just finished fairly recently hiking a 2,190 plus mile trail, the Appalachian Trail, which we're going to talk about today. Something that's, we could talk about a lot of different angles on it, but I think, hearing about it as a travel experience and as a way to connect with nature, connect with each other, I'd love to dive into all that. Since we have Largo here, Jessica, I don't mean to put you off to the side for a second here, but it's not very often that I get to talk to the children of the parents who took them on a whirlwind, around the world, kind of like nomadic existence. And we're linked to your podcast that we did before, where you can hear a little bit more about the story, of course, WorldTowning.com. But yeah, Largo, I'm just curious, how was that experience for you, being on the ride in a way? Because although you make decisions collectively as a family, when you're younger, you're still also going along with what your parents, how they live.
It's definitely been interesting. I mean, the initial kind of start to it almost seemed like it was them kind of, I don't know, leading us into the travel life, because initially we only planned on going out for a year. And then we were kind of like, oh, we like this. So we continued on. But I definitely think that it's partially just having found interesting enough things to keep the life, I don't know, enticing for what was younger me, but also giving myself and who my sister is now in college, my sister and I, enough control to kind of keep, I don't know, interesting. The travel life in general was definitely an interesting route. At 7, I was dragged out of school, dragged out of my life to go travel. Not that it was at all bad. It has brought so many good experiences, but it was definitely an interesting way to go about it. After traveling to what is now, I think, 68 countries, I would not have given it up for anything.
Yeah. What was the hardest part for you?
That's an interesting question. Out of everything, I would say in general for travel, the hardest part is mental. Of course, you have to adjust to a whole new style of life. However, being a kid, I feel like it changes slightly to more being able to find either a good group of friends or a good group of people that you can surround yourself with while traveling. That really is the key. Because loneliness is a factor when you're traveling like this. You have your parents, you have your family, which is definitely important, but it all comes down to how sociable you can be on this life, and it's definitely possible. It just takes a lot of effort.
Did you develop like a consistent friendships over the years that you've kept in touch with people and you've been able to see them regularly, sort of, like, yeah, I'm just curious how that's been for you coming into your teenage years, and have you been able to like maintain some of those relationships that you built over the years while
Yeah.
traveling?
So when we left the US a very long time ago, now I believe it's been 11 years, very little for kind of the route of social media existed. So I didn't have much in a way of connecting with my friends from back in the day. Now, as we progressed, as we kept traveling and in more of a stationary life, I managed to kind of get people's emails, people's social media, stuff like that, to keep me connected with some of them. Now, most of the friends that I made along the way were either random encounters, maybe somebody that I met on an online class, stuff like that, and it really was quite random. The efforts we made to kind of make friends along the way and all that definitely made a difference, but I feel like it was more the spontaneous friendships that formed along the way. And I have definitely stayed in contact with many people at this point. I would probably say that I have like maybe 5 or 6 very good friends that I don't want to say earned, but kind of, yeah, that I've mastered maybe along the way.
You've kind of like worked to maintain a relationship with. Yeah.
But yeah, it's definitely been a great experience, and I've managed to form really deep friendships with some people. But yeah.
What about the online schooling portion? I'm just curious, having that educational background and how you guys did it is obviously much different than sort of the daily, just going to school every day type of thing. How was that experience for you? What do you think are the pros and cons of that? Just, it's so fresh for you, so it's interesting to kind of hear your perspective on these things.
Of course, definitely. I think the style of kind of online schooling is definitely, I don't want to say not for the weak, but kind of. It sounds so horrible, so tough. But no, in reality, I think online schooling just takes a very precise amount of planning and work. I myself have gotten into a very good kind of system. I currently do dual enrollment programs with a few kind of programs with a few universities, and so that really has helped me through it, managing to kind of standardize while still being online. But I would say more interesting, the best part of it for me is probably that you can, I know a lot of people say this about it, but you can customize your schedule to quite literally any of your needs. You only really have to work around due dates, which normally you can get in perfectly fine. And then that allows you to go do things that maybe with a normal education style, just sitting at a classroom, you wouldn't. I mean, last week we went to a comedy show on Wednesday and I was perfectly fine on my work because that's the reality of online work. You can just move around your schedule, say, oh, I'm not going to work 2 hours on Wednesday. I'm going to work 2 hours on Sunday then. And that's kind of the great thing about online school. Not only that, you also just have a great, I want to have to say, independence about it, because you are generally the person who is responsible for handing stuff in on time, who is responsible for getting everything right, getting all the kind of understanding your concepts. And it really does give you a real sense of independence.
And do you want to keep this travel lifestyle going? Or like, I know your sister she's at university, and if she's there, she must have wanted to just have that sort of experience of being at a university, being in one place. What about you as you come into sort of like time period of your life?
As it does approach, I'm definitely planning on going to university. Not exactly for the stationary aspect of it. That is kind of a byproduct that I'm sure I'm going to get tired of eventually. But it's definitely a big part of, I mean, for my goals, I want to be a commercial pilot when I'm older. So I have a very clear set of goals that kind of require a university or some sort of education of that sort. And yeah, I definitely plan on attending university in the next few years, a year and a half at this point. It's crazy how time really flies. But yeah, I definitely see some pros and some cons to that. But I'm willing to kind of take that and to see where life takes me after.
What is one of your greatest memories from your time on the road with your parents and your sister and that lifestyle?
Throwing up in Morocco, right? All the times we get sick.
It's been a very long travel kind of. I have a very long list of stuff that I could pull from. I have to say, though, as just a general adventure, traveling across the Atlantic with my family in a very small boat, that was honestly a very nice memory because we were all kind of in the same place, yet we were locked to just not working. There was no Wi-Fi, no internet, no nothing like that. So we didn't really have much in the way of like stuff to do. And so it was really just like a forced cool down of sorts while traveling across the Atlantic. Some would say, oh, traveling across the Atlantic, that seems awful. That seems horrible. It was kind of just a break for us. And it really just allowed us to, talk a bit more, sleep a bit more, stuff like that really we wouldn't have normally gotten for a general pause in life. But yeah.
So how many people would travel on a boat for 22 days across the Atlantic and say it was a vacation? And all of us in the family feel the same way, Jason. So clearly, I mean, if someone's listening just going, oh my gosh, what a charmed life. Like we work a lot, as you can see. He has these lofty goals, and Will and I work a lot too. And so we work and we travel, and it can sometimes get really tiring. So, sitting on a boat for 22 days where you're like, okay, I have 2 6-hour shifts and then I have nothing else to do for the rest of the day is kind of nice.
And this is to say that we didn't go onto this Atlantic crossing expecting it to be a break. We thought it'd be completely the opposite, but it was a welcome kind of respite.
We'll get back to the interview in just a moment. I know you love earning travel rewards and cash back, and that's why you're going to love Rakuten. With Rakuten, you can earn cash back on everything you need to book your dream trip, hotels, flights, rental cars, experiences, and more, while still booking through your favorite travel sites. And don't worry, cash back can be earned on top of earning the credit card points and the hotel and airline loyalty points that matter most to you, depending on how you make your booking. Plus, with Rakuten, you can also earn cash back on groceries and other purchases like electronics, pet supplies, and more. And the best part, you can join today for free and start earning cash back on top of your travel rewards. Go to Rakuten.com or get the app. That's Rakuten, Rakuten. Rakuten, the most rewarding way to shop. Now, back to the show.
And this might be a nice segue into the Appalachian Trail stuff. You've done... I mentioned the RV thing before. You kind of did the backpacking thing. You've done the boat thing. Now you've done the walking, human-powered travel thing. I mean, you guys have done it all, really.
Exactly. We've got bike next, Jason. No, I'm not really.
No, but I think it's great because, it just goes to show over a period of time, you can switch styles, change things up, kind of keep things interesting for yourself, keep things challenging for yourself. And leading into the Appalachian Trail experience, which, I should just take for granted that people know what that is. It's a very famous long distance trail in the USA, hiking trail that runs from Georgia to Maine, or Maine to Georgia, I guess, depending on which way you go. Most people go from Georgia to Maine, I think. It is 2,190 plus miles. And it's a whole thing. It's got its own culture, it's got some built-in infrastructure. Certain towns you pass through are used to like hikers passing through town. So I think that's one of the things I want to talk about today is the experience of it, because we could get into like the logistics and the planning and all that. But to me, the Appalachian Trail is one of those, you don't want to label everything, but when you think about like climbing Mount Everest, you would say that's like an extreme adventure. And the Appalachian Trail feels like a real adventure that's accessible to a lot of people. You know, if you could just find the will to get up and like pack your tent up and lace your boots up and just go every day, and you have enough time and sort of the willpower, you'll eventually get there. But you guys are fresh off of it. I haven't done it, so you have to tell me.
I love that we're not going to focus too much on the logistics. All that stuff can be Googled, and it really is the deeper side of it, and the success to completing the entire trail is less about the logistics aspect of it. So happy that we're going to focus on that. So what was your question? What did we get out of it?
Well, what did you expect going into it, I guess?
So when I proposed to Largo, who I'm going to call Captain, because everyone on the trail, not everyone, but most people will take on a trail name. I'm Sunshine and he's Captain. And typically what will happen is people will give you your trail names. There's a lot of controversy about this. There's a school that thinks someone should give you your trail name. And then there's a school that's like, do what you want. We both picked our own trail names. And just to kind of keep it short and sweet on that, I picked Sunshine because it was actually supposed to be my birth name. And then my grandmother told my mom it sounded like a chicken's name, and she named me Jessica instead. And so I felt like it was a great way to kind of honor my mom, and kind of when you go on a long hike like this, it's kind of stripping away everything you've been conditioned to believe and think, and kind of going back to the basics. And so I thought that name would fit really well for me on the trail. And then you picked yours.
Yeah, that's right. I picked Captain mainly because I want to be a pilot, and I couldn't really think of anything more unique than that. But that also brings us to the point of that generally when you're given a trail name, I don't want to say 99% of the time, but generally it is that you're given a very, I want to say, normal trail name. Generally, you're either given some sort of event that has happened, maybe like, I don't know, cockroach or
no pot, because
exactly.
The guy traveled without a pot.
They tend to be far less of a deeper meaning.
Yeah.
Which is also a reason why I chose not to have mine picked for me.
Because I feel like mine would have been, since I have pink hair, it would have been something related to that was so obvious. And his might have been something, I don't know, related to teen or whatever. But that was his decision whether he wanted to pick his own or not. So that's kind of just a little backstory on the trail names. Like, some examples of trail names that we've heard are like, there was one woman who was Spark and Achilles and Gentle Yeti. So these were all different names along the way, and they had a special meaning for people. All right. So when I proposed it to Captain to go hike this trail, he said, I felt we should go. We were overscheduled, working on, people listen to me like, you're traveling, you're overscheduled. Well, he has these big, lofty goals, and they take a lot of effort and time, and we're willing to support those goals of him being a pilot. But as a result, he had pretty intense school, and we had intense work. And so we were all sitting at computers just working all the time. And I said to Will, he's never going to get another break with these goals that he has. He won't give himself a break. What do you think about I go hike the Appalachian Trail with him? And of course, Will was like, go. And so I proposed it to him. And his first thing was, what about school? And what about my business? He has a small business running Dungeons and Dragons groups. And I said, that's why we're going. That's why I want you to go, because you're so focused on that. The mind needs a break. Any adventure we've ever done, we don't force the kids. If they don't want to go, we don't do it. He said, you know what, I'll do it as long as I can keep my Dungeons and Dragons groups. And so we managed to keep those running while we were on the trail. And that's a whole other story that we can get into if it's relevant at another point. So for me, I thought it was going to be a hike. And I thought there's either the mental or the physical struggle, or both. I knew I wouldn't have the mental struggle. And it may sound really conceited or whatnot, but I felt like we had been preparing for an adventure like this through our 10 years of travel. We had gone with limited water and electricity. We'd gone without showering. We've traveled in backpacks, so I felt like I would be okay. And I can say now, having completed the trip, I was okay mentally. Physically, it was far harder than I ever anticipated. And for those of you listening, I'm 52. I exercise. I'm in relatively good shape. We have a pretty active lifestyle. And I thought it would be hard, but it blew my mind how much harder it was physically for me than I had anticipated, for sure. How about you, Captain?
Yeah, that was definitely a big part of it. Going into it, I really didn't want to kind of have to sacrifice big things in my life for a 6-month hike that would eventually be completed. So I had definitely tried, or I definitely had high criteria for what would cause me to go. And it definitely, I mean, yeah, you made a bunch of efforts to make it work, and I absolutely appreciate that. But it was definitely tough no matter what. I was doing, as I went into it, school where we had to take a month off in the middle, mainly because of my coursework. So it was a big effort, but I definitely think coming into it, we had made a lot of we had taken a lot of very good steps to help it work.
Well, so it took us 6 months, and it was actually 7 because we had that month break in the middle for him to go take his AP exams. But for the first 6 weeks, we would get off trail 2 days a week for him to do school. And then for the last 6 weeks, he had to do school as well. And so it wasn't uncommon for people to be walking by us on the trail. And since he was preparing for the French and Spanish AP exam, he would be on his phone speaking with his French teacher in the middle of the trail. And we were able to get Wi-Fi about 90% of the trail. So we would just be like, okay, I hope we wouldn't stop where we had Wi-Fi and wait for class. We would just hike. And when it was time for French class, we'd be like, okay, I hope there's Wi-Fi. And he would stand there. And I would just, take a break or do something with our gear or whatnot. And he would stand there and do his French class on the trail. So, it was definitely complicated dealing with all of that, and very rare to see on the trail. And I would not recommend it. I was also working 2 days a week on the trail in the beginning. Our circumstances and how we've traveled for the last 10 years, often we have to kind of give up parts of it or modify what we're doing in order to still be able to work and do school. And so this was one of those scenarios. Like I said, I wouldn't recommend it. It was really, really difficult. And once summer came, he was able to hike the trail with no school. And I geared my work back to about 15 hours a week. And it was still difficult to be working and doing it. But we got to do it. It's not ideal, but we still got to do it. And doing it with my teenager is a really cool experience. I didn't want to wait. Most of the people on the trail are between the age of 20 and 26, I'd say, and then retirement age, so 58 and up, because those are the ages that people have the more flexibility to do it. And I'm way past 20, and I didn't want to wait till retirement, and I wanted to do it with him. So we kind of had to work with the cards we were dealt.
Just for some food for thought for people, if you're looking to tackle an adventure like this specific one or something big like this where it's going to take months of your time, and ideally those months are like you guys did when you crossed the Atlantic, it's unplugged and you're in it, but like you said, there's the compromise with your life and the things you have going on, and if you just didn't make the compromise, you wouldn't have gotten to do it at all. But as people are listening, they could think, okay, you could do like what you guys did, which is like a through hike, what they call it, where you're just like, you're doing the whole thing from start to finish, and you can get off the trail, you're taking breaks. Some people do it in sections. They might have a month where they have that freedom without the distraction. And if it takes 6 months, well, they might do a month every year over 6 years, for example. I'm just painting a picture for anybody listening that wants to plan a bigger adventure, ways to think about it. I just kind of wanted to pull that out there. Do you guys, I can understand that's a difficult trade-off, because part of the experience is about like being connected to nature and kind of being away from everything. And I know from experience as a location independent entrepreneur, business owner, that it can be hard to disconnect. And even if you're just, you might not be carrying your computer and doing anything on the trail those 5 days, but if you're carrying it mentally, is it distracting from the experience? I know you said you wouldn't do it again, but how much of an impact was, and you wouldn't recommend it necessarily. So it sounds like trying to balance all that did make a pretty big impact in the experience.
Absolutely. I'll speak for me and then I'll let Captain. So when we went on this, the agenda was, let's go have a good time. I don't really care if we go all the way to Katahdin. I just want to enjoy it. And if it ever becomes unenjoyable for either one of us, we just stop. It was never a bucket list item of mine. And it wasn't of Captain's. And once we were 5 minutes on the trail, he of course was like, well, I have spent 5 minutes of my life on this trail and I'm going all the way now. And I'm like, oh.
Yeah.
Nice. And he was like, and if something happens to you, I'm going to keep going. So the aspect of working.
You're going to leave your mom behind?
Pretty much.
Yeah, he made that very clear.
I
He was
very
gonna push
prepared.
SOS and then keep going on the garment. For me, I thought it was just going to be fun. And then when I really broke it down before we left, I said, okay, what can I work on me personally? And I am a workaholic and a perfectionist. And I've really been spending a lot of time on myself and trying to live a more balanced self-care life. And so my goal was to work on that on the trail. And the trail at first I fought it, Jason. I was fighting it tooth and nail. I'd get off that trail for 2 days and I'd work like 40 hours in 2 days. I would just sit in front of that computer and work my butt off. And finally, the trail showed me who was boss. Because I got back on that trail, after staying up till 1 a.m. each, those 2 days. And I got back on the trail, and you can't hike a trail with 5 hours of sleep, carrying a 25, 30-pound back. I said, you know what, Will? You're right. I think I have to just stop working as much as I am and really focus on the trail, or we're not going to make it. And it's going to be my fault. And so I ended up working less. But what we were doing is we were having our computers. We were not carrying our computers. We could not take on that weight. We already had heavy enough packs. We would have them shuttled. They're shuttle drivers that work on the trail, and they shuttle people, and they also will shuttle computers. So for the first month, we would have our computers shuttled to wherever we were going to stay, the hostel we were going to stay at the next week. And we had to project that and project our miles, which was another whole kind of pain in the ass. And then after that first month, Will joined us from time to time, and he would shuttle our computers. And we can talk about Will's part of this equation, a little bit later on, because he was a huge part of our success as well. So, but the stress, your question was about, the stress of having to work and the logistics of getting the computers ahead was just really too much. And we had to make a decision. I had to make a decision for my work. He was going to be on summer break, so it was going to be fine for him. That decision was going to be made, but I had to make a decision for my work. And that was probably the only really mentally challenging thing I had, because we're not independently wealthy. And I needed to come back to a business that I was walking away from my full-timeness of it and leaving it for Will to pick up the slack while I was gone for that amount of time. And that was really, really scary, very, very scary.
That makes sense. Yeah. And we should mention Will's your husband. So
yes.
So people know.
No, Will's a random.
Will's a guy we just found on the trail and said, hey, can you help us out?
You guys posted out there on social media somewhere that he was, helping out a lot with delivering things and support and stuff like that. And it's wonderful to have that kind of support. And I think it's really cool in a partner, spouse or whoever, a friend you're traveling with, when you can separate like that and go do something for multiple months and still, be cool with that with each other and manage it together. That speaks a lot to.
Well, I'm not going to say it was super easy on our relationship, because we run a business together. We are together 24/7. I guess some could say we're codependent. We might say we're codependent a little. And it was really, really hard. And if you're the one that's left behind, it really sucks. It's difficult. And he was editing every single one of our daily vlogs that we put out. So he saw what we were doing, and he was not able to do it. And he couldn't do it with us. This is the first time we haven't done an adventure with the whole family. Avalon's a university, and one of us had to stay behind to work. And it made more sense that he did it because of the type of work that he does versus me. So, but I do 100% say that, yes, Captain and I are physically and mentally could have hiked this trail, but not with all the obstacles that we had with school and work without Will. And I think that we never really suffered mentally as well because of him. He was always willing to come see us or find us, within reason. We didn't see him every single weekend, but he was there as a great support system, both physically and emotionally. And that's why this worked. We were a team, the three of us. And that's just the truth of it. There were no one else, we didn't meet any other people. We met some other people that had spouses that were traveling along with an RV and would see them every couple of weeks and stuff like that. But in general, we were a unique situation to the trail. So if anyone's listening to this, think, oh my gosh, I need my husband to come along and be a support and this and that. No, 95% of the people on the trail are doing it alone, or maybe with a friend, but most of them start alone, and then they form something that's called a tramley, which is like a group of friends on the trail that they hike with for the support. These tramleys are really, really beautiful and incredible. So if you're listening to this thinking, I can't go alone, I'm going to be scared, I'm going to be this, just start, because you'll find your people along the way and you'll be okay.
Yeah, and I definitely have to say, for our situation where we were working every single weekend, it was definitely key to making that work. We could not have done it without him.
Yeah, we couldn't have, for sure.
Yeah. Okay.
For Will. Yay!
Nice. Well, I mean, like, some of these experiences, travel experiences, and like, frankly, they could be a multi-month thing, or sometimes it's just like one day out on the road. But sometimes that they impact you for the rest of your life. Sometimes it takes a while to figure out kind of how and process that and see how it ties in much later. Sometimes it's like a night and day thing. It's like, oh, I went and did this, and then I came back, and now I'm like this, not different person, but I'm different in some ways, right? Like, did the trail have any type of impact on you guys where it's like right now you can sit and say, wow, that experience really has like changed me in this specific way?
I would have to say in one situation, specifically for you, which would be your cholesterol.
Oh, shh. What? We're going to go that personal?
Yep.
Yeah, I had my blood work up done, Jason, because they say after the trail, you look really good, you're fit, whatever. But then when you look inside, it doesn't look so good because the food you're eating is processed, high in sugar, high in salt. And my bad cholesterol went bad. My good. So I mean, I'm not, and I never had high cholesterol before. So yeah, in full disclosure, thank you, Captain, for outing me. So how has the trail changed me? Okay, so let's go dark before we go happy here. We are a little over a month off the trail, and the first week, people have this tough transition when they're through hikers back to the real world. A lot of people go on the trail because they're trying to change something about their life that they don't like, or trying to find a direction, or trying to fix something, whatever the case may be. That was not really the case with us. There were a little bit of each of that, but not 100%. So I didn't think that transitioning back would be difficult for me. And I love the life that I was coming back to. I love the work I do. I love my husband. I love being a family. I did okay for the first week because we had celebration and family around us, and Avalon came to visit, and a friend from Italy was here. And then I went to a pretty dark space, which I'm still kind of on the tail end of it. It's been very hard for me to transition back to the noise, the loudness, the fastness. I am in the US too, so everything's big and bold and bright. Making decisions has been really difficult for me. Focus has been a little hard. And this is totally, absolutely normal behavior once you come off the trail. And so each day I feel like I'm transitioning back. I don't want to go back and live on the trail. Like, that's not what I want to do. I'm happy to be where I am. But when you go into a space for 6 to 7 months that is completely kind of peaceful and quiet, and you have 5 things you have to do each day, where's the water? Where are we sleeping? We'll check the weather, that kind of stuff. It feels a bit overloaded when you come back. And I've always been someone that functions extremely well and loves the chaos, hence all the traveling. So it was quite shocking to kind of transition back to that. But it's happening. Now, on the happy side, I have really, maybe more so than I should have, been good about not overworking. I feel a little bit of guilt and stress about it, but then I kind of check myself and I'm like, this is better for me. Don't overwork. And I haven't gone back to a 40+ hour week since I've been off the trail. And I think that's a really, now let's see if I can pay my bills, but, but that's, and also Will's been super supportive of that. Like, he recognizes that we both need to be working less and focusing more on self-care. So he's really encouraging that. And when I find myself going to this, I should be doing this, I should be doing that, I just go for a walk and kind of center myself. So that's kind of the change that's happened within me. How about you, Captain?
That's interesting. Yeah, I definitely had less of a transitional period
because he was already perfect.
Yeah. No, I definitely had less of a transitional period between coming back to kind of regular life, sort of like you, because honestly, I was just very excited to be back. I love being in kind of cities and in more crowded spaces, stuff like that. I will have to say, like, it was interesting getting back to regular life after having been on the trail and just getting up, walking, and then sleeping all the time. It really does mess with your head when you have a really far more complex schedule. Not only that, after the trail, about a week after, we had already planned to have, I needed a surgery. I had a condition called pectus excavatum, which basically meant that my chest was caving in. And so I had a metal bar put in my chest a week after the trail, which meant that, yeah, it was interesting. Now I cannot work out for the next 8 weeks, which was kind of annoying because I had really gotten into really good of a shape. And then now I'm just kind of sedentary now. But
He went from hiking 12 hours a day
yeah,
to sitting a lot more. It's crazy.
and so the transition there was a lot more drastic. It was very much I could not move for quite some time, and yeah, that was definitely an interesting part about it. But I have to say, now that I'm kind of back into the swing of things, I haven't really felt that much of a transition. Overall, it's been just a really nice comeback.
I'd like to comment on how I've seen the change I've seen in him, because he's not too boisterous. And I think it's really important, for people to hear, like, he started out 16 years old. We ended right before he turned 17. And I mean, I could name a dozen things. He was already a very mature and responsible young man and whatnot. But I really saw his leadership grow, particularly when I had to get off trail for a couple of days for tendonitis, and Will, his dad, joined him. And he just really took a major leadership role. And his leadership and his level of empathy and understanding and listening to other people's stories, his problem solving. Like, I feel like everyone should take their teenager out for a nice long hike. Like, he really, I'm amazed when at a point when there was a possibility that I was going to have to get off trail. I had tendonitis so bad. Will and I had a discussion about, what happens? He doesn't want to stop. What do we do? Do we let him go? And it was literally a 3-minute conversation that we would let him continue on hiking the trail by himself. There would be some disclaimers there. We weren't sure if he would slack pack, which means you hike all day and then someone picks you up at night and you sleep in a hostel. Then they put you back on the trail in the morning. I was very confident that he could hike all day by himself. And I was very confident he could sleep in the woods by himself. He knew all the things. He had the wood street smarts, we hadn't really figured out the logistics of it, but we had both agreed that he would be able to continue on the trail without me if I could not. And I felt he's a faster, better, stronger, quick on his wit hiker than I am. And then and also more than some of the people you'll see on the trail, so he was completely capable. And that growth, I don't know if I would have seen that in him at 15, if he hadn't hiked the trail. After a month in the trail, I was like, he can do this without me.
We'll get back to the interview in just a moment. Now, back to the show.
I'm not surprised to hear that Largo was that you were not having a problem with the transition, because your whole childhood was a transition to different places and things. So this is just like another one in the list. Really cool to hear that you had the confidence to press on in that way. So like, in that part of it, how was that experience for you being on your own on the trail?
That was interesting. So it happened very seldom that I was just completely on my own on the trail. I would either be if I'm making up a few miles here and there, or if I'm just going ahead. But the reality of it is, it's not too dissimilar from just hiking with her. We don't talk a large amount of the time that we're hiking, mainly because it's either hard or it's just not the best time. And so it's not really like it's a crazy social experience. So when I'm just hiking alone, it really just feels like I'm a hike as normal would be. And it was really interesting, mainly because I felt like I was one of the more capable ones in the group. So if anything, I would have been more worried about you hiking alone.
Well, how about your relationship with each other? How's that changed, if at all?
That's gotten interesting. Hiking with your mom in the same tent for 6 months changes things.
There might be some therapy in the future.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, no more farting in the tent. Maybe we need to sleep with our shoes on. I mean, 3-person tent, but it gets small. When you're on the trail, you can go. We went like 5 to 7 days without showers, and you don't carry an extra change of clothes. You have clothes you hike in and clothes you sleep in and maybe cold weather gear, but it's just not common because it's adding extra weight. So we got pretty stinky. And there was a point I'm like, okay, how much is too much? Like, is he, maybe I said to him, do you think we should get our own tents? And he's like, hell no, I don't want to carry more weight.
No.
So it worked. I mean, we already had a really good relationship, primarily as a result of how we've been living our life. We've had to be cognizant of each other's feelings and what triggers people have within the family, and work as a team. So, I said before, we'd been practicing for this for 10 years and we didn't know it. We really had been practicing with our lifestyle. And we were talking about the other day, and I think we had, just a handful, like maybe like 5 or 6 times where I wouldn't say we fought, we just snapped at each other. And usually it would be one of us, more, I would think it was more me than him. And it would usually be like, I'm sorry. I'm hungry and everything hurts. And, I'm sorry I snapped. I mean, there was never a big fight. There were a couple snappy moments where I got him up too early and he's a teenager and he didn't want to get up at 4 a.m., but we had to hit the miles, But overall, we work really well as a team. And like he said, we're not together 12 hours a day hiking. He hikes faster than me. So he's usually anywhere between, a couple feet up to a couple miles ahead of me. We had communication going. We would stop for lunch together and we'd talk in the mornings and the evenings, and we talked on the flats and the downs. We never talked on the ups unless he was ahead of me and I was climbing up a boulder and I thought I was going to die. And I'm like, no, like, you can do it, Mom, or if he had to pull my bag up for me. But other than that, we had a lot of kind of alone time and we would think about things and then we'd gather together and I'd say, hey, I was thinking about this. What would you do if you were in this situation? Just kind of crazy stuff. And you're out there for so long, we start to kind of have stupid conversations like, if you could pick the trail to be full of rocks or full of roots, which one would you pick? And then there were a lot of conversations, like 3-hour conversations about our ideal meal. Like I'd like a croissant from France and I'd like a breakfast from Germany, because the food on the trail is terrible. So, and it's all stuff you have to rehydrate and whatever. So there was a lot of time spent just having these kind of silly conversations along the way. Of course, I'm the mom. I really enjoyed this experience with him. And I'm grateful he went with me because I always say, we get 18 years, give or take. Maybe we get a bonus summer. And then, we want to let them fly off on their own adventures. So I'm glad that he was game to do it and that, it ended up being this kind of, not this 1-month adventure where we both said, okay, that was fun, but I don't want to do the rest of it, where he actually was really excited to do it. And I was like, uh-oh, I better find a way to make this happen now. Yeah. I better get better.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you won't get that opportunity again. This is a special time. It's great that you guys, despite the challenges of the work and the school and all the things, you really seized the moment and just made it happen to be able to spend that time together in such a unique setting. And you mentioned these solo hikers. I forget what the word was, where they kind of band together and like
tramley.
These types of things that are unique to the trail culture. Can you speak a little bit more to like the listener in terms of like what they could expect in terms of the culture on the trail, not just the hiking and sort of the physical aspect of it and the camping, and you can visualize that, but what about the community, the people you meet, the culture, the towns you go through? Can you speak a little bit more about that experience, that side of the experience?
That part of the experience is mind-blowing. Honestly, it's really mind-blowing. Now, we had done the Camino Frances before, so we had an idea, and for those of you who don't know, it's a hike across you start in France, you go across northern Spain to Santiago. It took us, 44 days. It's a little different of a hike because you sleep in hostels every night. You can't really tent. Some people do, but it's very difficult. And you don't carry your food. You eat in restaurants and whatnot. And you get showers every day. So it's a little more civilized. But we had a vibe and a feeling and knew kind of like what hiking community was like. But the trail, the AT trail, is like that community on crack. There is so much incredible support. We've talked about tramleys. We've talked about shuttle drivers. There's something really interesting called Trail Magic or Trail Angels, where you will be on the hike and randomly there will be a vehicle set up there and they will have free food. Sometimes it's like chili and barbecue and all out, and then they'll have Ziploc bags and toilet paper and, rehydration packets and all this stuff that they're giving away. Sometimes it'll just be a bunch of packaged goods. Sometimes it'll be someone there with Dunkin' Donuts and coffee. These are usually people who live in the community or passed through hikers. They realize how nice it is to just come up to a dirt road in the middle of nowhere, and there's real food. And so these trail angels, trail magic people are a phenomenal part of the culture. And actually our timing, I guess, was not so great. So we didn't see and have too much trail magic. But when we did, it was mind blowing. We were in the last 100 miles. It's called the 100-mile wilderness in Maine. There's nothing there. And all of a sudden we come out of this clearing and there's a dirt road, really dirt road and there's someone there with hot dogs. And we're like, oh my God, hot dogs and Coke and beer. And we're like, what the heck? We thought we were done with the trail magic. So that aspect is really, really amazing. And the trail magic extends beyond food. One day we called a shuttle driver. I had gotten dizzy in the Shenandoah Mountains, and we're like, we have to get off trail because I tend to get vertigo, and it starts with dizziness. And so we got to get off the trail. And this shuttle driver, someone says, call the shuttle driver. And he shows up and he says, I'm actually not a shuttle driver. I'm like, who do we get in the car with? Who is this guy, right? He's going to kidnap us? And he said, I'm an Uber driver who was Ubering a lot of AT hikers the last month. And he said, I've decided to dedicate the last 2 weeks to being trail magic shuttle driver. Your ride is free.
Wow. Awesome.
Stuff like that. There was, we were YouTubing daily vlogs. So we had a whole community there of people who would say, let me just meet you someplace and I'll bring you a lasagna. And just random people saying, does anyone need some shoes, or do you need me to take you to a resupply store? The community it's just phenomenal. There's support from other thru hikers, and there's support of the people in these trail towns that you pass through. You're not passing through huge cities when you're hiking. You're passing through really small towns that their livelihood depends on the trail and people sleeping there, and they pay it forward. They're really, really generous with us as hikers. And it makes a huge difference because it's hard. It's hard out there hiking, and there are days where you cry and there are days when you hurt. And then there's this saying on the trail that the trail provides. And there are times where I felt like this is kind of weird. Like I'd be thinking like, gosh, I really wish we had some trail magic. And all of a sudden we'd be going northbound and someone would be coming southbound and they would say, there's trail magic a mile up the road. And we're like, oh my gosh. The community for itself, the hikers are very protective of each other. So it's a very safe trail. I can count on less than one hand the situations that made me a little uncomfortable. And I was warned about them beforehand. Someone would be coming on the trail and say, there's a guy up there that doesn't seem so right. Or, this person, Or if someone's dog went missing while they were hiking, there was this whole trail. Do you remember what they called it? Like a trail
rescue potentially.
And like a trail telegram or something. Like you tell, it passes through the trail. So, hey, watch out for this person up on the trail. They're drunk. Or someone lost their dog that was hiking. Can you keep your eye open for it? All kinds of stuff like that. You really feel incredibly supported on the trail, which is real from a physical and, I need food aspect, but also from a mental aspect. People are always willing to talk to you if you're having a hard day. If you see someone that's crying or struggling, you might want to say, hey, let me carry your pack for a little bit, or hey, do you need to talk for a couple minutes? Do you have anything to add about the community aspect of it?
Yeah, it's definitely, the community itself is very uplifting. But I also feel like you should touch on the hostel experience of it, because hostels are a very big part of the Appalachian Trail. Most people generally stay in them. And it's basically just, I don't want to say summer camp, but something similar to that, where everybody is in bunks in the same room. And it really does provide a sort of very interesting environment to connect with different people, because most people on trail are from varying backgrounds. Some could be teachers, some could be CEOs, some could be world-renowned hikers. It really does bring a melting pot of different kind of cultures and people.
And also the culture, because you said that, this made me think of, you don't know how much someone makes and you don't really know their circumstances, which is really kind of wonderful. We're all just there together as people, because people tend to judge if someone's like, oh, look what he's wearing, or look what he's driving. He has a lot of money. Maybe he's, really nice, or whatever the case may be. All of that's removed on the trail. We're all equal. And so there's no, you don't judge people on their income or where they're from or all that kind of stuff. Everyone is working to help each other. There's a great amount of respect on the trail for something called hiker midnight. So when you're staying in a hostel, hiker midnight is 9 p.m. And only once on the entire trail did we meet two people that did not abide by that and were incredibly rude. But other than that, everyone is done. They're done their laundry. They're done cooking. They're off their cell phone. If they're going to be on their cell phone, they go outside. They abide by that hiker midnight at 9 o'clock, because someone is likely getting up at 4. Like you may be just there, making up some sections or something, but you're still super respectful of the people that are getting up at 4. Maybe you're on a weekend trip with the girls or the guys and you want to sleep till 7, but you still end up going to bed at 9 or being quiet by 9 because you're respecting the people that are getting up at 4 a.m. And that is really something amazing. We spent 185 days on that trail and we got off about once a week, once every 2 weeks to go into a hostel or hotel. And when we're in the hostel, like I said, one bad experience, that's it. Everyone else was so respectful, so helpful, offering like, hey, so your leg's hurting. Do you want to use some of my KT tape? Or I've met people on the trail that were running out of food. I always have extra food. I never learned how to pack my food properly. I'm just a mess. I'm always carrying too much because I'm a foodie. And so we would give food away for people that needed it. And also people would give us like, hey, we're a couple out having a picnic in this park and thru-hikers come through and they give us some of their pizza. Like people are just really, really generous and kind on the trail. Can't say enough about that.
The trail for you guys was also, I don't know if you looked at it this way as an opportunity to reconnect with your home country or if it just was baked into what you were choosing to do, but you have spent many, many years overseas. Most of the time you spend your lives outside of your home country, the USA. You choose to do that because you want to be in different countries. You want to be overseas. Being back into the USA for an extended period of time, I don't know if you want to give us some context of when was the last time you spent that much time in your home country? Did it teach you anything new about your home country? Did it allow you to reconnect with it in some way? Can you just speak to some of that?
That's
Absolutely.
a great question. And I love that question. We haven't been back in the US for more than 2 weeks at a time in 10 years. So
yeah. So it's like this is pretty huge.
Yeah. Do you have something?
So
and you were so little when we left.
Absolutely. The most amount of time I've spent, the most amount of time that I can really remember spending was maybe a month in certain kind of summer locations or some stuff like that. But I really haven't spent that much time really looking into the I don't know, the real back country, some might say, of the US. We mainly stay in cities and really generally populated areas whenever we come here. So it was really almost like a study abroad program, but back in the US. Having been said, I left when I was 7, so I really remember very little. And it was interesting to kind of go through these smaller towns and these smaller areas that maybe don't see as many people. And it's interesting to kind of look back on that because that really is, I think, the large part of what the U.S. is. And it was interesting to kind of go through and see that when normally we would only be in bigger cities, more populated areas, stuff like that.
Yeah, for me too, because even though I spent, 40 years in the US, I hadn't ventured to too many of the rural parts of the country, and definitely not in the southern part of the country. I spent most of my time in Los Angeles, New York City, and New York City above, Boston. And so it was a complete cultural experience. I wouldn't say it was as deep as I had anticipated because the trail is a mixture of people from all over the world, mostly Americans, but all over the world. And we got off trail only once a week. So we were only exposed to these communities once a week, but it was interesting to learn about, because I wasn't too excited about coming to hike in the United States because we've lived in the United States. And I was like, well, I want to go see someplace new. I spent 40 years here. So I'm like, I want the hiking and the cultural experience is what I wanted. But we settled on the AT for many reasons, and it was the right decision. And I went into it saying this is the right decision. But I didn't think culturally I would get that much out of it, to be honest. And I was kind of worried about that because I'm a culture junkie. And so I was worried, am I just going to feel like the life sucked out of me? And it's not that I hate the United States. It's just that I really like learning about other cultures and living within them. And I was pleasantly shocked about learning about the southern part of the country because it starts in Georgia. And I hadn't spent hardly any time in Georgia, North Carolina, Tennessee, Virginia, and even Pennsylvania. So it was very interesting to kind of learn about that part of the country, learn about the food, learn about the nuances. I'm going to be honest, the gun culture was a bit for me to take in. It's pretty prominent in the southern part of the country, and I'm just not used to that at all. And so there were a lot of places that said, don't trespass signs, don't trespass, and had like a gun, like we'll shoot you. And I wasn't going to go anywhere near places like that. There was actually a hostel that was kind of a self-serve hostel that had signs up like that, but we knew ahead of time. So I was like, okay, we can go on this place because we know we're not going to be shot because it's a hostel. But that was very difficult mentally for me to transition to, because I'm just not used to seeing people walking around with guns or them in cars or anything like that. Once we got to the northern part of the country, he was really young when we left, but for me, it was so nostalgic, particularly Massachusetts and Maine. I grew up in Maine. We spent a lot of time in Massachusetts. I just felt so happy and so connected, and got so much out of it. And just any place we stayed or went in Maine, it brought me right back to my childhood. And I got so much more out of that from a cultural standpoint than I ever thought I would. So overall, like I said, I wasn't excited to hike in the US, but I personally got more out of it culturally than I thought I would. And some was good and some was not, to be honest. We'll just stay in the happy space, but I am happy that we did this trail and did it in the United States. And people are like, okay, are you going to do the PCT and the CDT? For those listening, there's this thing called the Triple Crown where people do all three of these hikes. One is the Continental Divide and one is on the Pacific side of the United States. And financially, obviously, that's not in the cards. He's going his own route and got his own other goals that he's going to pursue.
I'm very definitively one and done with these.
One and done. And I wouldn't mind doing the other two, but I don't want to do it alone, and we can't both take time off from work. So it may be in our future. And I'm interested in kind of experiencing, I know the West Coast culture very well because I lived in California for 13 years. But I don't know kind of the Continental Divide culture. And now I'm kind of inspired to kind of learn more about it. Like it definitely gave me more than I thought I would coming into it. That's a great question, Jason. That was really a really good one, because once you've left a country for 10 years, it's like, did I miss it? Did I not? And I didn't miss it because I love everything we're doing. So it provided a lot more than I thought it would for me.
You can go on a travel experience like this, or an adventure like this, or whatever you want to call it, in your home country and still discover more. There's still more culture to discover right in your backyard. And I think that's empowering. And congrats to you guys. I mean, you did it. You survived in a tent with each other for 6 months with all the stinky farts and feet. Do you want to share where people can find you if they have questions, like all the good stuff? I know you guys are doing some group trips now. Tell us what's going on.
So we did vlog the entire trail, daily vlog, 185 days or vlogs. If you're really interested in kind of seeing what it's like, we talk a lot about the mental aspect of it and what we're feeling while we're on the trail, if you're interested in kind of that aspect of it. And obviously, Captain's really funny. I'm not so, but that's okay. I cry a lot on there because I get so emotional about how beautiful it is. So we have that. We have a YouTube channel. We've been vlogging our travels for not daily for 8 years, but just in general, usually weekly for 8 years. We host group travel trips. We have in 2025, we have a volunteer event in Cambodia where Captain is going to be rebuilding a library, and we're going to go along, and some people from our community are going to go along. We're looking for more volunteers, or if anyone just wants to make a donation. Everything is on worldtowning.com or worldtowningvoyages.com. We have next year for group trips, we have a hike on the Camino, the last 100 kilometers, Morocco, and there's a couple others that are going to be added there. And then we consult with people on the logistics of full-time travel. So you can find us at worldtowning.com.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks for the plug, Jason.
Yeah, no, we'll link up to it all. And I know we didn't want to focus on logistics today because it's a whole other type of episode, but were there any like 2 or 3, like 1, 2, 3 key planning resources that were just like, these are the places to go to figure out that aspect of it? People are listening and they're like, all right, I'm intrigued. I want to learn a little bit more.
I would say if you want to do it, find someone who has done it, not someone who's done part of it, someone who's done the entire trail in 1 year. If that's your goal, if you want a section hike, then find a section hiker and pick their brain, read their book, watch their vlogs, do a consulting chat with whatever you can find about them. Someone who's done what you want to do, talk to them or learn about them. That is the best resource I can offer. There's also a book, I think it's called Trail Tales. Just Google it, about the mental aspect of the trail. It is real. Most people quit or stop the trail because of something mental that they're having trouble dealing with. Even though the stats say otherwise, it is definitely mental. We've talked to everyone on the trail. If you can get your mental in check, you can do this. And don't be discouraged because of your age or your weight or your finances. We saw the people who make it all the way to Katahdin. There is no demographic. It is not just the young people. It is not just the skinny people. It is not just the rich people. You just have to be really determined and willing to sacrifice a lot to make it.
Is your hunch with the mental stuff, do you mean, is that people that the challenge was too much? Or is it, wow, for maybe some people, this is the first time they've actually had this much time alone with their own thoughts, and then they're facing some existential crisis and breakdown? Is it like that? Or
we're people, people need people. Some people need less people, but in general, we need people. And so the biggest mental thing I saw was that people being lonely.
Okay, yeah. Just like family. Getting lonely out on the trails too much day after day. Yeah.
And some people really connect very quickly and are very extroverted and find a community and want a community. And others, it just doesn't happen so natural for them. So they get lonely. They just get lonely. And then when you're alone with your thoughts and you're lonely, there's a lot of self-doubt that creeps in. You might have someone at home that's encouraging you to come home. What I will say about Will is he was tough loving us. We weren't ready to quit the trail at any point, but he was like, if you want this to happen, you're going to have to work less. If you want this to happen, you're going to have to hike through pain. If you want this to happen, he was really tough loving us. And he was also incredibly supportive as well when I would call crying and whatnot. But not everyone has that support. So in a situation like that, you have to be really mentally strong. And it's hard to be alone. I mean, I know from doing that, I hiked with Captain, and I have no desire to ever hike for 6 months again alone. I just don't want to do it. I like the alone time we had. We had a ton of alone time together, even though we were together. But I want to hike with people that I love or who I'm very close friends with. I like having that shared experience. And I think that we live in such a fast-paced world in life that everyone fantasizes about kind of going away for a bit. And then once you get on the trail, you're like, oh, wow, I did it. And this is great. Oh, my God, it's awesome. I have all this time. And then you realize 2 weeks in, okay, I've thought about everything. I've decompressed, but now I'm kind of lonely. So there is this huge aspect of we need people. And if you don't find your people on the trail, you will get very, very lonely. There's very few people we met on the trail that really wanted to just be alone. And those were usually the endurance hikers who were knocking it out. Most people, it takes them 4 to 6 months, usually 6 months. But there are the people that are kind of these ultra athletes who are just there for the physical aspect of it, and they just knock it out every day. And they seem to be, maybe their brains and bodies are already conditioned to spend this time alone because they've done other kind of ultra athlete stuff. People that are running the trail or people that are, trying to hike, 30 miles a day, they're a different scenario. But the majority of people are just regular people, kind of like you and I and Captain. And we're so used to having people around. We fantasize about having a break, but we really don't know what that means until we're out there. If that makes sense.
Love it. Yeah, that's helpful. Yeah. Captain, Sunshine, what a pleasure. As always. What's my trail name? I don't have one yet. I got to earn it.
I was just thinking about that, Jason, going...
Podman? No.
Podman. I have a question for you, Jason. Have you ever been interested in doing a hike like that?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I wish I had done the Appalachian Trail back in the day. It's always something I've been interested in doing, so I was really excited to chat with you guys about it. Oh, I was thinking about this. One of the it was like the second or third episode I published on this podcast over 11 years ago was a group of long distance hikers. I was staying at a hostel in Colorado and they were hiking the Continental Divide Trail. And I got them together and convinced them to have a conversation with me. And that was really cool. So yeah, I've done my fair share of like hiking trips and stuff, but never like the did trekking in Nepal and stuff like that, but never did like the multi-month thing.
I know you're interviewing us, but I have 2 questions for you. Well, one for you, and then one statement. If you did this, what do you think would be your biggest challenge? Do you think it would be mental or physical?
Well, I mean, I have 2 small kids now, so my biggest challenge would be getting the time to do it. I would have thought mentally before, but hearing you, talk about the physical aspect of it, and I've been hiking parts of the trail, and I've been in Pennsylvania and seen all the rocks and been walking on the rocks and seeing how hard it is just for, a couple miles. So probably it would be the physical until you got into better shape, and then maybe switching over to the mental and then back to the physical.
You're kind of already mentally prepared for this from the lifestyle you've been living, Okay, so one thing I do want to say, which we didn't mention, which I think is really important for anyone who's listening to this, who's considering this, who feels like, oh, I don't know if I can do it. Most people plan for this for a couple of years. We decided December 6th and we started March 22nd. So not many months. We really did our work on the safety aspect and our gear, but we didn't fully research the entire trail. Like, where's the best hostel? Where's the best ice cream? Any of that stuff. All that stuff can be done on trail, and hikers love to talk. They'll tell you where all of that is if you just ask someone. Do not think that you can't do this because you have never slept out in the woods. We had done a lot of hiking. I said we did the Camino Frances, but up until that day we stepped foot on that trail, I had never slept in a tent in the wild that I had carried my food unless it was pitched in a campground in a resort.
Oh yeah. Okay.
So, we had a lot of day hiking and a lot of week-long hikes that were assisted, but nothing where we did it all on our own. We got on the trail. I didn't even know how to use the filter. I watched a Google video, couldn't remember how to do it. It says Sawyer squeeze. I couldn't figure out that I was supposed to squeeze it, one of my shining moments. I'm a little embarrassed about it still. But if we can do this, so can you. I call it on-the-job training. We were never in danger because of the things we didn't know. We just had to suck up a lot of things along the way and kind of trial and error, like, wait a minute, oh, you're supposed to do this with the air mattress after we slept on it for a week, uncomfortable. Yeah. So, and you can do this. Like, I truly believe that if you have the will to do it, you can do it. You can learn things. We've learned a lot of different things along the way. We learned how to RV, we learned how to sail. Now we learned how to thru-hike. It is possible. Don't let anyone discourage you that you can't and say that you can't.
Of course. Anyone can hike, as some might say.
Yeah.
Love it. Thank you for that last burst of inspiration, and always a pleasure, guys. Look forward to the next time.
Thank you, Jason.
Cheers.
There you have it. Thank you to Jessica and Largo for the candid conversation. Congrats to them. What an epic adventure. And I wanted to share, before I let you go, this tradition I read about that happens at the halfway point. It's called the half-gallon challenge, it's referred to. So when thru-hikers reach about halfway through the trail of the Appalachian Trail, they can go to the Pine Grove Furnace State Park General Store and attempt to eat an entire half-gallon of ice cream in one sitting. If they do, apparently they get a small wooden spoon as a prize. This is what I read. I find this to be very motivating for somebody who loves ice cream like myself. I could just only imagine walking for months and just thinking about this ice cream the entire time just to kind of get me halfway there. So anyway, if there are any fellow sweet tooths out there, then you can certainly relate and perhaps use that as motivation to get yourself to the halfway point. How'd you feel about this one? I feel like these types of adventures, whether you want to walk over 2,100 miles or not, I don't think is the point. I find it mind-opening to hear that, hey, really, these types of adventures just do take place one step at a time. And that inspires me to think, I don't want to say bigger, but just think, even big travel goals, you can just break down and they are achievable. So I really enjoyed this one, and I hope you did as well. I'll leave you with a quote from the poet Robert Frost, who said, "The best way out is always through." Thanks for listening, and I'll see you next time. Don't forget to sign up for our newsletter over at zerototravel.com/newsletter. Keep in touch over there. Thanks for listening. Peace and love to you and yours. Cheers.
This podcast has been brought to you by zerototravel.com. Ideas and advice to make your travel dreams a reality.